Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the world of ancient India, a place of fragrant lotus ponds, palace courtyards echoing with flutes, and sandalwood-scented air that makes everything feel like a warm lullaby. You're going to be born from fire. No, really, fire. Not hospital lights, not into a warm blanket. Just poof, flames, and boom. You're Draupadi. You probably won't survive this, but strangely, you do. You emerge fully grown, perfectly poised, and somehow not even slightly singed. Talk about an entrance. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me your location and what time you're listening in the comments. Always fun to see where Bedtime finds people around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first memory isn't even yours. It belongs to the crowd gasping as a girl with dusk-dark skin and lotus petal eyes steps calmly out of a holy fire pit. There's a brother beside you, also born of fire, with warrior brows and a look like he's already halfway through a sword fight in his mind. His name is Draupadi. Yours is Draupadi. You're a gift from the gods, a prophecy fulfilled. Though, if you ask your father, King Draupadi, you're also a strategic move in his long revenge against a very annoying ex-friend named Drona. So yes, you're technically an instrument of vengeance, but also kind of a miracle baby. No pressure. Now, your palace in Panchala is a little less glittery than most princesses would expect. You're raised on war chants and divine duties, not tea parties and embroidery. Your days are filled with Vedic recitations, archery lessons, which you're not supposed to enjoy, but secretly do, and people bowing whenever you pass, even if they're not entirely sure why. You quickly realize that your looks come with consequences. Every poet in the region starts composing awkwardly long stanzas about your hair. Even the birds seem to pause when you walk by, probably because the universe hiccuped when you were born, and now the air acts a little weird around you. One scholar from the West even wrote that your voice rung like a conch shell under moonlight. Historians still argue whether that's poetic genius or just what happens when you've never heard a woman yell properly. But let's not forget the awkward bit. You weren't technically born in the regular way, which means you sometimes feel a little disjointed, like you skipped a step and now have to quietly figure out how to be a girl, a princess, a prophecy, and, spoiler alert, a wife to 5 men. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Your father sees you as a political answer. He starts planning a swayamvar, which is basically a talent show where princes try to win your hand with archery, charm, or inherited military complexes. He wants to humiliate Drona's favorite student in the process. Because if there's one thing dads are good at, it's dragging old grudges into their kids' wedding plans. Meanwhile, you're trying to stay centered, eat your yogurt, and not panic about the fact that every single noble family in Bharat is gunning for your hand in marriage. Kings you've never met are already comparing your dowry potential to war elephants. Bards are writing songs about you being the new Lakshmi, and some random astrologer swears you're destined to end empires. No pressure. There's also this priest in the corner who keeps saying your name means she who makes entire lineages go to therapy. He's probably joking. You hope. And so, you spend your youth half princess, half symbol, sipping tamarind juice under blooming neem trees while waiting for fate to sort itself out. You don't know it yet, but the fate part is going to get very messy. There's going to be a bow involved, and a blindfold, and 5 husbands who arrive smelling vaguely of jungle and poor life choices. But for now, The moon hangs low over Panchala. Your fireborn skin shimmers in the lantern light, and the world hasn't yet fallen apart. Enjoy it while it lasts. The day of your swayamvara begins with a drumbeat loud enough to scare the parrots out of the mango trees. You barely sleep the night before, which is understandable. You're essentially the prize in a kingdom-wide archery tournament, and your future is being decided by who can shoot a fish in the eye while looking at its reflection. Romantic, right? You rise before dawn, slip into layers of silk so delicate they hum when you walk, and brace yourself. Somewhere in the hall below, 50 princes are flexing in front of bronze mirrors, adjusting their turbans, and pretending they're not terrified of missing a target and ending up a meme in ancient scrolls. It's going to be a long day. And then you see the bow. Oh, that bow. It's massive, heavy, more like a polished tree trunk than a weapon. No ordinary man can lift it, let alone string it. Your father Draupadi has set the challenge so high that only the most skilled and most narratively convenient can even hope to succeed. One by one, the princes try. They grunt, strain, and ultimately embarrass themselves in front of an increasingly bored crowd. One guy pulls a muscle. Another accidentally steps on his own foot and blames it on a breeze. You sip water politely and avoid eye contact. And then he enters. He's wearing rags. No royal armor, no grand trumpet announcement. Just sun-dark skin, hair pulled back in a simple knot, and a face that suggests he's either a sage or someone who just emerged from a very spiritual cave nap. He's Arjuna. You don't know that yet. The Pandavas are in exile, disguised as Brahmins, wandering the kingdoms like philosophical nomads. He steps forward, bows low, not to the crowd, not to your father, but to the bow. That gets your attention. He lifts it. The hall goes quiet. He strings it. Your heart skips. He fires. The arrow slices the air, ricochets perfectly, and hits the eye of the rotating fish target like the gods themselves lined up the shot. The crowd erupts, Draupadi gasps, and you exhale, because something about this man, this quiet, capable stranger, just feels right. Historians still argue whether you truly fell for Arjuna in that moment, or whether it was the mythologized weight of destiny pressing on both your shoulders. But the spark was real, and the chaos that followed? Oh, very real. You approach with your garland, eyes down, heartbeat fast. The murmurs grow. Someone shouts, "He's not a prince." Another hisses, "That's a Brahmin. How dare she?" One particularly loud noble named Karna makes a sarcastic remark, and before the crowd can riot, Arjuna and his brothers disappear into the crowd like smoke. You are swept away, veiled again, your fate now tangled in a web of secrets and sandals. Now comes the fun part. You return home with your prize, still not knowing he's royalty, and his mother, Kunti, hears the news before seeing the situation. "Whatever it is," she calls from another room, "share it with your brothers." Awkward silence. 5 sets of eyes turn to you. You blink. That's how you end up with 5 husbands. Now, in modern terms, this would be an immediate group chat meltdown followed by a week of awkward family therapy. But this is ancient India, and the Pandavas are nothing if not dramatic. Their mother's word is law. And surprisingly, you agree. Maybe because you're divine, or maybe because you're tired of being someone's trophy. You decide to be more than a queen. You decide to be theirs. All of theirs. Your marriage is the gossip of the age. Every neighboring court loses its collective mind. Scrolls are inked, bards compose 5-part wedding songs, and jealous princesses whisper that you must have cursed eyeliner. No one can believe it. Some call it scandal. Others, revolution. The logistics? Oh, wild. You rotate between husbands, 1 year with each. No overlaps, no double bookings. You spend a decade becoming not just their wife, but their anchor. Each Pandava is different. Yudhishthira quotes scriptures in his sleep. Bhima eats like a small kingdom. Arjuna overthinks everything. Nakula is always moisturizing, and Sahadeva just knows things he shouldn't. You manage them all like a cosmic event planner with divine patience. And in the center of it all, you remain, fierce, graceful, and stubbornly luminous. You hold the family together. You become the queen of Indraprastha, a magical city gifted by the gods and built by Maya, the architect demon, who has excellent taste in marble. There's a palace of illusions, floor trickery, and floating halls. It's the perfect home for a queen who's already half myth. Things seem perfect, but fate, as you'll learn, doesn't enjoy symmetry. It likes dice. And very soon, someone's going to roll badly. You knew things were too quiet, too perfect. The palace gleamed, the fountains gurgled, and your husbands were finally starting to understand the importance of not interrupting you during meditation. Naturally, something had to go wrong. Enter dice. One fine afternoon, your husband Yudhishthira, he of the righteous posture and moral lectures, receives an invitation from his cousin Duryodhana. It's for a friendly game. Yes, that Duryodhana, the same guy who once slipped on your palace's illusion floor and vowed eternal vengeance because he got wet in front of his crush. He's still bitter and petty, like royal grade petty. But Yudhishthira, he goes, because honor, because diplomacy, because someone forgot to tell him that dice and royal egos do not mix well in epic narratives. The game is hosted in the Kaurava court, and it's rigged. Like, cartoonishly rigged. The dice shimmer oddly. The dealer, Shakuni, Duryodhana's uncle, has a face that just screams, "I cheat at board games." And Yudhishthira? Oh, he falls for it. First he wagers gold, then jewels, then chariots, then servants. You'd think someone would stop him, but no. This is ancient India. Men have to go all in to learn a lesson. So Yudhishthira keeps losing. The dice clatter, cheers erupt. You're still in Indraprastha, sipping tamarind water, completely unaware that your name is about to be tossed into the pile. Then he gambles you. Let's pause here.
Historians still argue whether this moment was a dramatic metaphor, a political necessity, or just a very bad Tuesday for you. But it's written, recited, and remembered. Yudhishthir wagers his wife and loses. A messenger is sent. You are summoned. No context, no explanation, just come to court. You arrive in your finest silks, expecting a diplomatic function. What you get is silence. Every eye turns to you. The room is heavy with guilt, triumph, and fear. In the center, Duryodhan grins. Beside him, Karna sneers. Shakuni twirls a die between his fingers like he invented betrayal. And Yudhishthir? He won't meet your eyes. Duryodhan says you're now a servant, orders you to sit on his lap. That's when the air changes. You stare him down, unmoving, unblinking, a storm behind calm eyes. Then, Dushasana, another of Duryodhan's brothers, lunges for your sari, grabs the end of it, pulls. But you, divine, defiant, fireborn, you pray, silently, internally. You call out to Krishna. your cosmic friend and eternal witness. And something miraculous happens. The sari doesn't end. It unspools endlessly, like a magician's scarf, only with more divine commentary. Dushasana pulls and pulls, arms trembling, sweat pouring, but your modesty remains untouched. The crowd gasps. Someone faints. Someone else starts mumbling prayers they haven't said in years. You stand in the center, unmoved, radiating fury and divinity. It's not just cloth, it's a symbol of dignity, of justice, of a woman who refuses to be broken in front of fools playing games with kingdoms. Finally, the gods intervene. The elders speak. The game is reversed. You are returned to your husbands. For a moment, it feels like redemption. But you're done. Done with games, with honor codes that bend only after they break you, with kings who can't say no. You vow right there, with a voice that makes even the marble sweat, that you will not tie your hair until it is wet with Dushasana's blood. It's not the kind of bedtime promise most people make, but then again, you're not most people. This moment changes everything. You return home with your husbands. There's no music, no celebration, just the silent pact of vengeance thick in the air. Historians still debate if this moment marked the true start of the Kurukshetra war. Not the kingdom split, not the palace insult. You, a woman dragged into a hall, humiliated, and turned into the spark that lights an epic fire. You begin to prepare, quietly, with grace. But there's steel in your walk now. The world has tried to break you. Instead, it made you a flame. The dice may have rolled, but your turn's coming. The palace never quite feels the same after that. You move through the corridors with your head held high, but even the courtiers step aside a little faster now. Not because you're broken, but because you're burning. There's a weight in your silence, a storm behind your gaze. You're still Draupadi, the queen, the wife, the beauty born of fire. But now, there's something else, something sharper, like you're constantly holding back the urge to reduce the world to cinders. And just as you begin to settle into the rhythm of this new, tense normal, your husbands lose everything. Again. Yes, again. Yudhishthir is invited back for a second round of dice, and because he clearly missed the day at Dharma school that covered "Fool Me Twice," he goes. This time, the stakes are higher. The loser goes into exile for 12 years, plus 1 year incognito, like the world's most stressful game of hide and seek. Naturally, he loses. So, off you go. From a palace of illusion and gold to a forest with thorns and questionable drinking water. You don't complain. You pack light. You tie your sari tight. And you step into the wilderness with the same grace you'd use walking into court. Because queens don't stumble, they adapt. Your forest life is an adjustment. There are no servants, no chefs, no polished floors that trick guests. Just trees, wild animals, and the occasional mystical sage who appears dramatically mid-air to offer cryptic advice and herbal tea. Your days are spent gathering roots, boiling rice on smoky fires, and trying not to roll your eyes every time Bhima declares loudly that he could be eating roasted peacocks back home. Still, you make it work. You cook, you clean, you counsel your husbands, who now spend their time debating philosophy, swinging swords at trees, and sulking dramatically whenever anyone mentions dice. It's rustic, but it's yours. One day, A sage visits and offers you a magical pot, an akshaya patra. It refills endlessly with food, but only until you eat. After that, it's done for the day, which means you have to wait until everyone is fed before you even nibble on a peanut. You feed sages. You feed your 5 very hungry husbands. You feed random forest wanderers. And only then, when the stars are out and your stomach's growling like a jungle cat, do you eat. Historians still debate whether this act was divine patience or just the best PR move in ancient epic history. There's another twist. Jayadrath, a local king with too much ego and too little sense, shows up one day while your husbands are out. He sees you. He decides, uninvited, that maybe he should be your husband instead. You say no, of course, politely, firmly, repeatedly. He doesn't listen. So he kidnaps you. Big mistake. Your husbands come back. Bhima cracks his knuckles. Arjun flexes dramatically. Nakula and Sahadeva synchronize their sword swings like they've been rehearsing this. They storm after Jayadrath, rescue you, and drag him back like a very embarrassed goat. You're given the chance to speak. You don't scream, you don't rage. You ask for mercy, but not forgiveness. He's shamed, humiliated. Let go, for now. Because you believe in consequences, not chaos. Your words are measured, chilling, and deeply educational for anyone who thought you were still just the pretty one. And somehow, through all this, you endure. Through 12 years of heat and rain and moral debates, you remain queenly. You even get a bit used to the forest sounds. The owls become your bedtime soundtrack. The trees, your new palace walls. There's peace in the discomfort, strength in the silence. But you don't forget. The court, the dice, the laughter. You remind your husbands often, not with guilt, but with steel. You press the memory into them like a seal. Because one day, when the time is right, they will remember that you were humiliated in a hall full of men who said nothing. And one day, they'll roar loud enough to silence that memory forever. For now, though, you stir the pot, you stoke the fire, you wait. Because revenge, like rice, is best served when fully cooked. Year 13 arrives quietly. No trumpets, no scrolls, just the slow shift of wind through forest leaves and a shared glance between you and your husbands. The exile is over, but not really. You've got one more year to survive, and this time, no one can know who you are. Great. So you all disguise yourselves and head to the court of King Virata. Think of it as the ancient version of witness protection, but with more veils and metaphors. Your husbands scatter into roles: cooks, dancers, animal trainers, court sages. Yudhishthira becomes a professional storyteller. He already had the voice for it. Bhima becomes a chef, honestly perfect. Arjuna, through a magical curse turned gift, transforms into a dance teacher. Yes, Arjuna teaches interpretive dance now. Somewhere, fate is laughing. And you? You become Sairandri, the handmaiden to Queen Sudeshna. You tuck away your royal grace, wrap yourself in humility, and glide into your new life like a shadow. You tend to the queen's hair, mix fragrant oils, and measure every word carefully. It's humbling, it's quiet, and it's hard, because even in disguise, men still stare. One man in particular, Kichaka. He's the commander of the army, arrogant, spoiled, strong, and absolutely convinced that you're meant for him. From the moment he sees you, his desire curdles into obsession. He stalks the palace halls with wine in one hand and fantasies in the other. And you dodge, you deflect, you warn, quietly, firmly. But he doesn't stop. One day he corners you, drunk, entitled. You slip free and rush to the court, your veil torn, your dignity intact, but trembling. You cry out for justice, and the hall goes silent. No one moves, not even your husbands. They're still in disguise, remember? One wrong move, one slip, and the year's secrecy is shattered. The war will begin too soon. So they wait. You wait. But Bhima watches. Later that night, he meets you in secret. You tell him everything. Your fear, your rage, the humiliation of knowing this man will strike again if he thinks no one dares to stop him. And Bhima says softly, "Let's set a trap." So you do. You tell Kichaka to meet you in the dance hall after dark. He arrives, drunk and smug, but instead of you, he finds Bhima waiting in the shadows. And Bhima, he doesn't speak. He just delivers justice. The next morning, Kichaka's body is found flattened like poorly made roti. Everyone whispers. Some say a demon did it. Some say divine punishment. You sip water silently and don't say a word. Justice has been served. The veil remains intact. Historians still argue whether this incident revealed the Pandavas' location. Maybe, maybe not. What's certain is that your silence shook a kingdom more than any shout ever could. Eventually, the year ends. You all reveal yourselves dramatically because, let's face it, it's not a proper epic unless there's a grand reveal. King Virata's court gasps, warriors kneel, enemies flinch. And just like that, you're back, draped in queen silks, walking through palace corridors that whisper your name. No longer a handmaiden, no longer a shadow. Draupadi. Again. But this time, you've changed. You've worn the costume of humility and survived the theater of fear. And you've learned, power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it plots. You speak now with the voice of every woman who's ever been cornered and told to be quiet. You walk not just for yourself, but for every sister veiled in silence. And with the year complete, exile over, and identities revealed, it's finally time. Time to go home? No. Time for war. Because forgiveness might be divine, but revenge? That's deeply human. So here you are, back in royal silks, back in a palace. But this time, not for tea and diplomacy. This time, you're sharpening memory into strategy. The dice game, the exile, the humiliation. They weren't just episodes in your life. They were fuel. And the fire's been smoldering for years. Now it roars. The Kauravas refuse to return your kingdom. Big surprise. They offer you land, small tracts, fragments. 5 villages, crumbs from a feast they stole. Yudhishthira, ever the peace preacher, tries negotiation. Sends Krishna as an envoy. Krishna smiles, speaks of dharma, tries to reason with men who wouldn't recognize virtue if it bit them. Duryodhana? He laughs. He says he won't give even a needle's worth of land. Okay then, war it is. You don't pick up a weapon. You don't need to. You do something sharper. You remind. You stand before your husbands, your allies, your growing army, and you speak. Not loudly, not theatrically, but clearly, calmly. Like truth itself is sitting cross-legged in your chest. You recount that moment, That day in the hall, the silence of the elders, the dice, the cloth that never ended, the promise you made with your hair still loose. Bhima clenches his fists, Arjuna closes his eyes. Even Krishna's usual mischief fades to stillness. You don't demand vengeance. You don't need to. You simply expect it. Historians still debate your role in this. Were you the catalyst, the conscience, the soul of the war? Maybe all three, maybe more. The armies gather. The Kurukshetra plain stretches vast and dusty, waiting to drink in fate. Elephants stomp, conches blare, banners flap in winds that carry centuries of karma. Brothers against brothers, friends against friends. It's a war of dharma, but also of debts. And you watch from a distance, not passive, not absent, but omnipresent in every oath your husbands make. Especially Bhima. He made a vow that he'd tie your hair only with Dushasana's blood. You didn't ask him to, but you didn't stop him either. The first day of war begins like any other, with a sunrise that doesn't know it's about to witness a massacre. Arrows darken the sky like migrating birds. Steel clashes with flesh. Horses scream. Men chant and weep and die. Sometimes all at once. Krishna guides Arjuna's chariot. Yudhishthira recites Dharma like a battle hymn. Bhima hunts. He looks for Dushasana. It takes days, weeks, and then finally the moment comes. A duel. Bhima and Dushasana meet in the chaos of war. No speeches, just rage. Bhima roars. He remembers the hall. He remembers your sari. He fights like hunger incarnate. And when he wins, and he does win, he keeps his promise. He washes your hair with Dushasana's blood. Graphic, yes. But remember, this isn't a bedtime story for toddlers. This is epic vengeance. And in this world, justice often wears crimson. Back in your chamber you sit, silent, still. Bhima arrives, hair dripping, eyes wild. He kneels, and for the first time in years, your fingers close around a comb. You part your hair, you twist it slowly, and you tie it back. The silence around you isn't shock, it's respect. Not for the violence, but for the keeping of a promise, for the closing of a wound, for the woman who never raised a sword, but broke an empire. With the first blood vengeance served, the war rages on, vast, brutal, and relentless. Each day bleeds into the next, soldiers falling like leaves in a storm, heroes rising and faltering like the sun behind clouded skies. You remain a quiet presence in the background, an anchor to your husbands as they navigate the chaos. Arjuna fights with precision, his arrows cutting through the air like whispers of destiny. Bhima battles with raw strength, muscles straining and sweat mixing with the dust. Yudhishthira carries the burden of leadership, his heart heavy with the cost of each fallen warrior. And throughout it all, you watch, your gaze steady as a mountain. The battlefield is more than clashing weapons and cries of war. It's a theater of dharma, karma, and fate. Warriors chant sacred verses even as they bleed, seeking the blessings of gods and ancestors. Yet, amidst this carnage, moments of unexpected tenderness emerge. A soldier pausing to shield a wounded foe, a warrior offering water to a thirsty enemy. Historians still debate the extent to which this war was inevitable or a tragic failure of diplomacy. Some say it was fate. Others argue it was a series of missteps and misjudgments. But one thing remains clear. You, Draupadi, are central, not just as the queen whose honor was at stake, but as a symbol of resilience and dignity. During a rare moment of respite, you sit beside Yudhishthira under a sprawling banyan tree. The scent of earth and smoke mingles with the cool breeze. He confides his doubts, the weight of decisions that have led so many to death. You listen, your calm presence offering solace where words fail. Then comes the night when you dream of your fireborn origin. Flames dance around you, warm yet fierce, illuminating a path not just for yourself, but for all who follow. It is a reminder. Your strength is eternal, forged in the crucible of hardship and divine will. As dawn breaks, the battle calls once again. You rise, gathering your composure like armor, ready to face whatever the day holds. For though the war is far from over, you carry within you the unbreakable spirit of a queen, a wife, and a woman who has endured the unendurable. The war's midpoint brings unexpected challenges, testing not just your husband's courage, but your own resilience. The battles grow fiercer, alliances more fragile. Among the chaos, whispers spread of an extraordinary warrior arriving, Karna, the son of the sun, whose skill rivals Arjuna's and whose loyalty to Duryodhana seems unshakable. Karna's presence shifts the tides, a storm cloud looming over the Pandavas. You hear tales of his generosity, he who never refused a gift, even at great personal cost. Yet, there is mystery in his past, a secret birth that scholars still debate, and a tragic fate that colors his every action. You watch from the sidelines as Karna and Arjuna face each other again and again, their duels like celestial dances filled with both grace and destruction. Your heart tightens, not just for the warriors, but for the tangled web of kinship and rivalry that binds them. Meanwhile, you must navigate the politics behind the scenes. Your voice, once ignored, now carries weight. You counsel your husbands and allies, balancing hope with caution. Your presence becomes a beacon of steadiness amid the storm, a reminder that this war is not just about power, but about dharma, the right path. Amid the turmoil, there are moments that reveal the depth of your character. You comfort widows and orphans, organize provisions, and inspire the weary to endure. The tales of your compassion travel even to enemy camps, softening hardened hearts. Historians still debate how much influence you wielded in these quieter moments. Was it the unseen hand guiding fate, or simply a queen doing what was necessary to hold her family and kingdom together? Perhaps both. One evening, under a sky strewn with stars, you find yourself alone with Arjuna. He speaks of destiny and duty, of the burdens that come with the bow. You share a rare laugh, the tension momentarily easing. It's in these small, human moments that the vast epic feels closest. But the war presses on. The final chapters are still unwritten, and you steel yourself for the trials yet to come. The war's darkest days arrive, as the Kurukshetra battlefield turns into a theater of tragic losses and fierce battles. Your heart aches with every fallen warrior, every brother lost, every hope dimmed. Yet, you stand firm, the flame of your resolve burning brighter than ever. Amid the carnage, whispers spread about the Bhagavad Gita, the sacred conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. You imagine that moment, Arjuna, overwhelmed by doubt, hesitation trembling in his grip, and Krishna, the divine charioteer, gently guiding him back to purpose. It's a lesson in duty, courage, and surrender, one that echoes through time. Meanwhile, the war's toll extends beyond soldiers. The land itself mourns, rivers stained red, forests silent, and the sky heavy with smoke. The weight of destruction presses on every soul, and you feel the weight keenly. You hold your husbands close, reminding them of the dharma they fight for. Your voice, soft yet steady, becomes their anchor. Sometimes, you catch Bhima stealing moments to drink quietly, his grief a storm hidden beneath his strength. Historians still debate the historical accuracy of the Bhagavad Gita's placement, its timing, and even its authorship. Yet, its power is undeniable, a spiritual beacon amid chaos. In the quieter moments between battles, you recall your own trials, the dice game, exile, humiliation, and how each shaped you. You think of the countless women across history who've borne similar burdens, often in silence. Despite the darkness, hope lingers. A final reckoning approaches, and with it, the chance to restore balance. You prepare yourself, not just for the end of war, but for the life that must follow. In the stillness of the night, you whisper a prayer, not for victory, but for peace. The final days of Kurukshetra loom, and the air is thick with anticipation and sorrow. The great warriors face off in battles that will be remembered for millennia, their names etched into the fabric of legend. You, Draupadi, watch as destinies intertwine and fates unfold with both elegance and brutality. Bhishma, the grandsire, lies wounded, refusing to die until the sun turns backward. You remember the respect and fear he commanded, his unwavering loyalty, and the heavy burdens he bore. His fall marks a turning point, the beginning of the end. Your husbands fight with unmatched valor, but the war's cost grows unbearable. Friendships shatter, families are torn apart, and even the gods seem to pause in solemn reflection. You feel the weight of every loss, the echo of every sword. Yet, your spirit remains unbroken. You carry the memories of those lost and the hope of those who remain. Historians still argue about the war's true scale. Was it a grand allegory, a historical battle, or a blend of both? What matters is the story's lasting impact, the lessons it imparts on power, justice, and resilience. As the dust settles, you stand with your husbands amidst the ruins and the survivors. The kingdom awaits its new chapter, one forged in fire and sacrifice. And you, Draupadi, are at the heart of it, a queen shaped by trials, defined by strength, and remembered forever. After the war's thunderous end, the kingdom feels hollow. Victory tastes bittersweet, like burnt honey. You walk through the remnants of what once was, where laughter mingled with music, and now only silence breathes. Your husbands wear crowns heavy with grief, their eyes reflecting battles both external and within. You reflect on the paradox of power. It promises glory but demands sacrifice. The palace halls, once vibrant, now echo with memories of friends lost and innocence shattered. The weight of rulership settles on Yudhishthira's shoulders, a burden both majestic and merciless. In private moments, you console him, reminding him that the throne is not just a seat of command, but a sanctuary for healing. You find strength in your shared resilience, a silent pact among survivors to rebuild what was broken. Meanwhile, whispers among sages and scholars ponder your role beyond the battlefield. Were you merely a catalyst for war, or the silent force that held the family's fractured pieces together? Debates swirl like monsoon winds, but your quiet dignity speaks louder than any argument. You also engage with the people, widows, children, farmers, listening to their stories, sharing their sorrows. You understand that true power lies not in conquest, but in compassion. One evening, as twilight paints the sky in hues of lavender and gold, you sit by the palace garden's edge, feeling the gentle breeze carry hope anew. The cycle of life continues, pain mingled with promise. Your journey, marked by fire and resilience, teaches that even in the darkest nights, dawn inevitably follows. As peace slowly returns to the land, you find yourself stepping into new roles, beyond queen, beyond wife, beyond the scars of war. You become a teacher, a counselor, a guardian of stories and traditions, ensuring that the lessons of the past ripple forward through generations. You gather the children of the kingdom, telling tales not just of heroism, but of humility, courage, and justice. Your voice carries the gentle weight of wisdom, weaving the fabric of history with threads of hope and resilience. In the palace, you encourage your husbands to govern with fairness, reminding them that true leadership is measured by kindness, not conquest. You advocate for rebuilding the villages, restoring rivers, and nurturing the land that once bore the scars of battle. Historians still debate how much influence you wielded in the shaping of the post-war era, but stories of your compassion and strength endure in folk songs and village lore. Yet, even as you nurture the future, memories of the past linger. The dice, the exile, the humiliation, and the fierce vow that shaped everything. These memories serve as both caution and inspiration. You understand that healing is a journey, not a destination. And so, night after night, you sit by the hearth, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows, reminding you of your fiery birth and unyielding spirit. The kingdom breathes again, and so do you. Years pass, and your story becomes legend, whispered around fires and sung in courts. Yet, beneath the grandeur, you remain deeply human, marked by joys and sorrows, triumphs and regrets. You walk through the palace gardens, feeling the weight of your journey, balanced by the lightness of survival. You reflect on the complex tapestry of your life, the moment you won the swayamvara, the brutal dice game, the exile's harsh lessons, the burning humiliation, and the war's fiery crucible. Each thread shapes who you are: a queen, a survivor, a symbol. Your relationships with your husbands evolve, sometimes tender, sometimes fraught, always layered with history and love. You remind them and yourself that even amidst divine destinies, human flaws persist. Meanwhile, tales of your resilience inspire women beyond your kingdom. Your strength becomes a beacon, a whisper of empowerment in a world that often silenced women's voices. Historians debate your motivations, your emotions, your agency. Were you merely a pawn or the queen who held the chessboard? The answer, like many in epics, remains beautifully ambiguous. One evening, you watch the stars, pondering the cycles of life and fate. You think of fire, its power to destroy and renew, and realize you embody both. And so, with a heart full of stories and a spirit unbroken, you continue your journey, ready to face whatever chapters lie ahead. The years weave on, and you find yourself reflecting, not just on your personal saga, but on the broader world. Its endless cycles of conflict, peace, loss, and renewal. You see the threads connecting your story to countless others. Queens who fought silently, warriors who loved deeply, and common folk who bore the brunt of fate's whims. Your role expands beyond palace walls. You advise young rulers, speak at gatherings, and become a guardian of dharma itself. Your presence commands respect, not through force, but through wisdom, tempered by lived experience. You nurture gardens of peace where once war had sown seeds of destruction. You host dialogues on justice, compassion, and resilience, planting ideas that grow quietly in the minds of those who listen. Historians still ponder how much of your legend is fact and how much is myth. But in every retelling, your essence endures, the fierce yet gentle queen who challenged fate with grace. In moments of solitude, you meditate on the paradox of power, the delicate balance between strength and vulnerability, action and patience, justice and mercy. You recall that fire again, not just as a symbol of your birth, but as a metaphor for your spirit, enduring, transformative, and eternal. With the twilight settling gently, you prepare for the final acts of your journey, knowing that every ending is simply the start of something new. As your story nears its twilight, you embrace the quiet strength that comes with acceptance. The battles have ended, the kingdoms restored, and the echoes of war have softened into the gentle rhythms of everyday life. Yet, the fire within you still burns, steadfast, unwavering. You gather with your loved ones under a canopy of stars, sharing stories of triumph, loss, and love. The laughter mingles with the night air, soft and soothing, a balm to the scars carried by all. You think back to the journey, the swayamvar that began it all, the humiliation that tested your dignity, the exile that forged resilience, and the war that demanded sacrifice. Each chapter is a testament to your strength, your courage, and your unyielding spirit. Historians will debate your legacy for centuries, but you know the truth. You are more than a queen or a wife. You are a symbol of endurance, justice, and the power to rise again. And as the night deepens, you feel a profound peace. The fire that once roared now flickers softly, a steady glow lighting the path forward. Your story, like the ancient rivers, flows on, timeless, eternal, and inspiring. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.